Let's talk about the nature of science. That's going to be an important thing to understand before we get too involved with actually learning physics. So this might be familiar, you might have talked about this before, but it's good to always kind of ground what we're talking about in the basics. So the nature of science. Science is a way that we try to understand the world around us. That's what science is. It's the process of trying to understand the world around us. And so you might ask why. Why do we want to understand the world around us? And here's a couple reasons that I've come up with, but you might have other reasons as well. And that, one, we can better appreciate the natural beauty around us. The world and the universe, there's a lot of incredible stuff, just complex and amazing, and the lack of a better description is beautiful. And so if we understand how it's working, that often gives us a better appreciation for that beauty. More practically, it also helps us to make predictions of something before it happens. So if we want to know, will my glass of water break if I knock it off the table, knowing science will help us predict that, and then we can, plan accordingly. Or if I were to get into a car crash, would I die? And so if I would, how can I predict a situation where I wouldn't die? Using airbags, creating cars that crumple, et cetera, et cetera. So making predictions is useful so we can make the world a little bit more like we would want it to be. And that ties into our last thing of solving problems. If something isn't working for us in the world around us, if we understand how the world works, we can look at, are there ways to change it? Are there ways to adjust it? If you get sick, by understanding science, you can solve that problem by knowing what's making you sick and kind of adjust for that. And so good science, and I'm going to use that term lightly, good versus bad, good science is anything that helps us do these things, anything that helps us better understand the world. So that's what our definition of good science is something that helps us better understand the world. Bad science is something that makes it harder to understand the world, or makes it harder to do all of those things and why we would want to understand the world. And I want to kind of distinguish this as being, it's not necessarily about right versus wrong, it's about what is useful for understanding the world. And this is because science can't ultimately determine or decide whether something is true or not. Like, that's not a process that it can do. Science, truth is kind of more of a philosophical concept, like, is something ultimately true, or have we just not found the place where it doesn't work? So science is about understanding the world, and if we can understand it well, then we're saying that that is working, that is doing good science. Even if there might be something that's slightly off, or there might be some mechanism that we don't know about yet, it can still be good science. That being said, that doesn't mean science is completely made up or completely, set aside from truth. A goal would be to find true information about the universe, about the world, so that we can understand it. But since we know that we won't ever be able to perfectly prove or know for a fact that something is true using science, we say that we pursue that truth rather than that we determine that truth. And so it can help us ultimately be very confident. So kind of what all this summarizes to is, I want to say that what we do with science is science lets us be very sure that the world probably works this way. And you can fill in this with, whatever it is. The atomic theory lets us be very sure that the, atoms probably look like this and function like this and do these things. And that's what we're saying, is we're not saying for sure there's no way we could be wrong, but we are saying unless something crazy that we are completely missing out on, this is the way it is. And that's because it's trying to help us to understand the world around us. It wouldn't be useful if it wasn't at least very close to or approaching the truth.